it just seems like there's going to be more and more demand for electrical equipment, right?
I foresee that being the case for many years into the future.
Our customers do not realize that we're not living in 1999 anymore. You can't get a transformer made in 8 weeks anymore, right? It's going to take a long time, and you need to plan for that. We've got to do something about it, right? So, Greg, you've been here for 60 days, right? Coming from a slightly different industry, but not too far off. Like, are you surprised at like the lead times of the equipment?
Yes and no. I'll say being right in an adjacent industry, the battery industry, I'll say a lot of our projects were determined upon lead time for transformers and switchgear and equipment like that. So industry standard, we always booked about 2 years of lead time for those items.
Okay.
So that didn't really surprise me coming into it, but I see a lot of customers that are surprised by that.
Yeah, you're just used to it, right? Because like I'm thinking of like when I was your age, right? And I started working for my dad in 1999, and like transformer lead times were 6 to 8 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And so then over time they've crept up, and now like what you've seen, I mean, certain manufacturers are over 2 years for a distribution transformer. And then if you want to get into power transformers, which you and I have been talking about a lot lately, in some cases you're talking 5 years for that to happen, right?
Yeah.
So I'm surprised by it. You're probably used to it though, because you're a little younger than me.
Yeah.
Did you see like in the battery business, did you see lead times, did you see them creep out at all while you were there, or were they always kind of about 4 years?
Yeah, they were always in that 2 to 4 year window.
Sure.
That didn't really see them creep out too much,
Right.
just because focusing in the battery industry, we weren't directly involved in the purchasing of transformers or switchgear, stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think like in our industry, like everybody is used to transformers being, again, 6 to 8 weeks, or, maybe they kind of got out to a place where they were 16 to 18 weeks. Yeah. But, come 2021, everything moved out. But a lot of people are still in the mindset that, oh, this is temporary. It's going to go back to the way it was. And I was thinking that it would go back to the way it was. But here we are, 5 or 6 years removed now, and things have not gone back to the way they were. In fact, in some cases, they've actually gotten worse. So the problem is that our customers do not realize that we're not living in 1999 anymore, right? Like you can't get a transformer off the shelf. You can't get a transformer made in 8 weeks anymore, right? It's going to take a long time, and you need to plan for that. And unfortunately, because of the condensed schedule of construction today, it just doesn't really allow for the 2 year the 2 year lead time. So we've got to do something about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I think those lead times haven't shortened, and I hate to say, I think in a lot of cases they'll lengthen, especially with, let's say, some of your more regular house manufacturers, right? Just because of the electrification of everything, AI, EVs, right, and just general infrastructure upgrades.
Yeah, as we look out, like on the horizon, what we know is coming in the industry, like it just seems like there's going to be more and more demand for electrical equipment, right?
Oh, certainly, and I think that's kind of why I've smiled hearing 8 week lead times, 6 week lead times were customary, because that's not something that I'm used to. It's
right.
That's a lovely thing to hear, right? Anybody will jump at that. So
well, again, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. I'm kind of old. Yeah, I think we've seen like varying different reasons, or maybe a combination of different reasons as to why we are where we are today with lead times, right? So there was a period of time going back a couple of years where it was like, it seemed like it was component driven or materials driven, and it was difficult to get materials. And I think that supply chain has worked itself out, right? I think the supply chain, out of necessity, out of survival, has had to like strengthen itself and has had to become more robust, right? We've seen all these manufacturers deepen their relationships and deepen their bench, if you will, on who they go to for suppliers.
Yes.
Right. But what are we seeing now? Like we're past all that. So why are the lead times still out to 2 years? I mean, you hit on it a couple minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, exactly that, right? It's the upgrading of infrastructure, right? So again, the renewables industry has really been my background, right? We're bringing a lot of generation online, right? And I mean, it's not just even transformers, right? We've got to generate in DC with solar, for example, and upgrade that, right? Transform that to a higher voltage, but also you have to convert it from DC to AC. So, right, when you're bringing on all this generation, right, and you've got old infrastructure, right, it's just a great combination to push out lead times and constrict the manufacturing resources that are available.
Right. So like when you're talking generation, you're talking probably mainly solar for the most part.
Solar, yeah, wind. I mean, I've got a long drive into work, so I pass by wind, a lot of wind. Right. But I mean, just even, new generation like gas turbines for AI, centers, right? Just general upgrades as well.
Yeah, so all these alternative power sources like coming online, right? They're coming online out of necessity, right? Like the grid is completely taxed, right? So we've got to find new sources of electricity, but right, that doesn't happen by magic.
No.
Right? So like when we're out there, you see all those solar farms, we've got transformers connected to it, switchgear, all these other things that make that, generating that power and putting it up onto the grid. There's all this other equipment that goes into making that a reality, right? So that's, that in combination with other electrification efforts of the grid. You mentioned EV charging. You've got huge demand now that we're seeing come from data centers, like, with the push for AI. So, we're through supply chain issues, but now demand is so... has increased so much, right? Like lead times have not gotten better, even though supply chain has improved.
Yeah. And I foresee that being the case for many years into the future.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So
yeah, I mean it's good. It's job security.
It is. It is job security.
Right. Yeah. You haven't been here too long, but but let me tell you about a couple of situations. So. Yes, even though the lead time for a new transformer is long, right? There's folks out there. There's people that we work with that stock transformers, just for that reason, for emergencies. Because one thing's for sure, if you sell enough transformers, one of them or some of them or a whole bunch of them are going to fail, right? They're not made to last forever, right? Like the good ones should be lasting for 30 years, right? But there's a lot of different manufacturers out of there. There's a lot of stuff coming in from other places, not just made in the U.S. And the reality is that these transformers don't last forever. They're going to fail, right? So what do you do when what have you observed us do when a customer calls and they say, "Hey, I'm down. Like my transformer is completely failed. It's non-repairable," right?
Yeah. I think really, we just hop very quickly into a needs analysis, right? Identifying, all right, what are the constraints, right? Is this a critical operations, right? And maybe in the context of our conversation, it is. And then we're either seeing what we have in-house, right, or what other options we have within our network. Do we need new on this, or do we need remanufactured, right?
Absolutely.
Reconditioned. Is that applicable, right? Or are we close enough where we can still meet your demands, right? If that's moving up in size, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I mean, given the customer options, right? Like you mentioned, remanufactured, new. Maybe we can't find a 1,000 kVA, but man, here's a 1,500 kVA.
Exactly.
Same voltages. It's 12470Y and it's 208Y on the secondary. It'll work in an emergency situation. No problem, right? So, and I think that's one of the things that, again, how we can bring value to our customers. It's not just that we know how to quote transformers and we generally know how they work, but it's also the relationships and it's the vendor network that we have. It's the ability for us to call a half a dozen people looking for a transformer for one of our good customers on an emergency basis, and we can get that call on a Friday. It always seems you get that call on a Friday, by the way, right? You get that call on a Friday, and you got to search for it. It changes your whole day, and then you're trying to coordinate shipment overnight and a delivery on Saturday morning. I swear every emergency goes down that way, but man, we do it all the time, right? Yeah. And that's what keeps the customers coming back. Well, it's one of the things. Right? Yeah.
Well, I mean that just goes to underscore, right? Really, what Zang was established on 77 years ago, right? Is treating people right, and I will say, being new to the organization, that's something that really has impressed me. right, is doing right by the customer first and foremost. And I think going back to our core values, right, I wasn't around when we were selling gear in the 60s or 70s, but...
Me neither, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, good point. Good point. We could bring Tom back, maybe.
Yeah.
But no, I think those values have just held true, and it's impressive for me to see. Just I think that's something that's unfortunately being lost.
Absolutely.
Right,
yeah.
and that's why we've grown our vendor network to the point where not only do we want to work with vendors, but they want to work with us, right? Because we make things easy for them, just through communication, right? Staying on top, paying attention to the details, and trying to do the heavy lift before we go to them, right?
Absolutely.
So we're not just pushing it off on their plate.
Definitely.
So that's been really impressive to me in my first 60 days, and certainly has me excited, to grow here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you pointing that out, and I will say that, one of the things that we pride ourselves on here is, yes, of course, like take care of the customer, right? Like, there's that philosophy, the customer's always right, and of course, where applicable, we march down that road, but, another thing is I say it all the time, you're only as strong as your vendor network. So not only do we want to treat our customers really well, but also we want to develop like really deep relationships with our vendors and treat them right.
Yeah.
And like you said, do the heavy lifting so that when there is that emergency, they're going to pick up that phone call because they know it's us. They know we've done the heavy lifting. They know that they can trust us.
Yep.
And typically what we're bringing to them is like a very real opportunity where somebody really needs help. So we're able to engage them and get them to basically partner back with us to help that customer out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.